Okay, so good vach, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful to see the tens and tens of people who are here joining us for this very special moment as we commemorate Kristallnacht this coming week as the 9th of November, a momentous moment in Jewish history and world history. And we are extremely fortunate to be able to be taking advantage of spending some time with our members. And, why this is incredibly important because Paul and Miriam Gross have been members of our shul for the last 26 years. 26 years. And they walk every Shabbos morning. They walk all the way from West Broadway to Young Israel of Lawrence-Cedarhurst. Rain, snow, they are constantly here, consistently here. And it's really something just to be aware of is how much wealth and breadth of experience that we have in our shul. And sometimes we just see people and we assume, but it's never good to assume. It's always good to appreciate, to ask, to meet. And this is a product of many conversations, the opportunities I've had to spend time with the Grosses, and for them to share with us this really special moment in this experience that they have gone through themselves. For those who have not met the Grosses yet, this is a good impetus to put names to the faces. Paul Davins in the back of the main shul, still today, in the back on the right-hand section, the backmost bench on the right. And Miriam Davins just behind him in the very frontmost part of the mechitza in the women's section. So it's find the two of them. So this is going to be a fascinating discussion which, Paul, when you started telling me your story, I was amazed. It was an incredible experience. And I want to actually start off by thanking Rabbi Yaakov Feitman, who's the rabbi of the Red Shul. Now, the Red Shul, we'll be honest, is that the Red Shul was not there when you moved in. Right, so it was Young Israel and Cedarhurst, but when it became an available option just across the street, the Grosses started going to the White Shul and the Red Shul. And in 2007, Rabbi Feitman said, that around this time of year, Kristallnacht, let's have Mr. Gross speak. And this was the first time that Mr. Gross spoke, you told me, and after that you spoke at dozens and dozens of places, talking about your experience. And I feel that we also have a chalik we'd love to have the opportunity. So without much further ado, thank you, Mr. Gross. Thank you, Mrs. Gross, for taking the time. It's wonderful to see lots of family members who are here joining us tonight. I can see in the audience. And throughout the program, please, everybody should feel free to write in questions. We'll try to address some of the questions as we go through this at the end. So there's going to be a time for Q&A from the audience. I'll moderate those questions. Please feel free to reach out and to reach and put out some perspectives. I'd like to start off just to start at the very beginning, Mr. Gross. Mrs. Gross, tell us a little bit about the beginning. Tell us about the beginning of your experience, what you remember before all of this whole story happened, before we get to the story of the Holocaust itself.
Yeah. First of all, if you allow me, I want to thank the Young Israel of Lawrence-Cedarhurst for giving me the opportunity to tell them my story. Special thanks to Rabbi Trump for organizing the event. Now, as far as before, basically, I come from a town called Hoidu Bessermain, which had 30,000 people. Out of them were 3,000 Jews. And so we had, before the war, we had a big shul, we had a shtibel. And we had a pretty normal life. We had a shoichet, we had a moyel, we had a store. So we had basically almost everything like we have in America today, except the Goyim hated us terribly. You say they were indoctrinated to hate the Jews at all costs, and that was Hitler's. As much as he was crazy, that was his secret weapon. That he knew that Eastern European Goyim hated the Jews, and if he's going to destroy the Jews, they're going to take his side. So that's basically what happened before the war. Now,
also, you can I, if it's all right, may I share a picture? I went.
But you got to understand one of the things that I got to remind you. Paul was 7 years old in the Holocaust. So his memory from before the war is not that much, just as a child.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. I actually,
That makes it.
all right, before we even go further, it's all right if I share a picture. Now, I know this picture
Yes.
after the war, but it gives a sense of just how old you were, Mr. Gross. Is that all right if I just...
Yes, sure.
This is a picture from your album, which you very kindly let me...
Sure.
And this is when? This is right afterwards, right?
Yes, this was probably 1947 or 48. So I was about 10 years old here. And
Wow.
this was in my hometown.
So this is another picture.
This picture was my passport picture. This I was just about to turn 13 years old that before we went to Eretz Yisrael. And I was bar mitzvahed in Israel in 1950 in Pardes Chana, which was an absorption camp. So I was just turning 13 here.
It's just amazing to see the youth in your face and to think about what this all means going through this. There's one other, before we get to the story itself, but there's one other picture that I wanted to ask you about, is this picture over here, this Rov. Do you want to just tell us a bit about who this is?
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not sure who he is. He wasn't the rabbi of our town. So I'm not sure who he is. He must have been just one of the elderly Jews of the town. As you see, the boy is wearing a Mogendovitz. Yes. That means yellow star. That means this was time of the Holocaust is starting. The Germans came in already. If you were wearing the yellow star.
Yes, this must be. Okay, so what? That's a little bit of the beforehand. How about now? If you wouldn't mind sharing your story as in the sequence in the way that you experienced things.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. I feel an obligation to bear witness, since most of the survivors are not here anymore. What is common among Sonai Israel is the hatred of Am Yisrael. Is common among the people of the Torah. They are jealous of the Jews who gave so much to civilization. Ever the false god was from our people, even the false god disgruntled rabbi as their god Yoshke. You can imagine how anti-Semite must feel about worshipping a Jew who was rejected by his own people. I think that is the root of their hatred towards us. Now let me put you into a time machine. I will transport you back 76 years. The year is 1944. The war has been raging in Europe for 5 years. Most of the Polish Jews have already been exterminated. I lived in a small town in Hungary named Hajdubesztermény. I was 7-year-old myself, and I experienced anti-Semitism. I was walking to school. I was harassed by Shkotzim. They used to beat me up and pull my pants. Now, I want you to understand the hatred Eastern European Goyim. Since most of you were born in America, you did not face such a hate. There's a big difference between American Goyim and Eastern European. The Eastern European were brought up with a deep hatred for Jews. The priests in the church constantly preached hatred against the Jews. The Goyim were told the Jews killed their god Yoshke, and that the Jews exploited the Christians and cheated in business and so on. So when the Germans entered Hungary in 1944, they found willing helpers from the local population. I used to hear the radio when the grown-ups listened. Every day they came out with new laws against the Jews. Jews could not attend college, could not practice law. A little later, new laws came out preventing Jews from conducting business. You can imagine how difficult it was for the Jews to make a living. My family was in the meat business. We used to buy geese and ducks from the Goyim, share them, and prepare and ship them to the big towns. When we could not conduct normally anymore, my big brothers used to carry some geese and ducks on the train to deliver to customers. My big brother Shmuel told me before he passed away 13 years ago that one day, as he was going on a train, some goyim saw him and started saying to each other, "He must be a Jew. Let's throw him off the train." Somehow he managed to escape from them. One day they announced that all the Jews will be put into a ghetto, which meant they closed up a couple of streets and built a wall at the end of block to close us in. Conditions in the ghetto were quite difficult. We were mostly starving since we had no means of livelihood. Whatever money we had, we spent on buying some food from the goyim. After a few weeks, we were told that we are going to labor camps. One of my most shocking memories is when a Rabbi Citron, who showed up, who had a nice long white beard, showed up one morning cleanly shaven without having his long beard. He must have heard that some Jews had their beards ripped out in the concentration camps. The following day, the Germans marched us out of the ghetto in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. They were worried that the goyim, who lived for hundreds of years, might prevent them from taking the Jews away. The whole town, young and old, were all out on the streets, yelling and throwing garbage at us. Even the Germans were shocked to see that. As I said, I was 7 years old. To me, it was like an adventure. I felt like a soldier, swinging my arms happily. One German said to another, "Look at that stupid Jewish kid. He thinks he's going to have fun." They walked us 20 kilometers to Debrecen, where the cattle cars were waiting for us to take us to Auschwitz. We camped out near tracks with tens of thousands of Jews from the surrounding villages. There were 3 transports from our area to Auschwitz. The first left already. The second was filling up fast. Each transport was about 10 to 14,000 Jews. My brother Israel, kept urging us to get on the train rather than wait, so we got on. These were cattle cars, no seats, no facilities. They put around 100 people in the car. We hardly had room to sit on the floor. They put a pot in the corner to use as a toilet. It was very dehumanizing. When people asked me about the Holocaust, what was my most horrible experience was actually the train ride. And also, because the train ride, you can imagine the condition of about 100 people in a cattle car in the middle of August heat. Once a day, they gave us a bucket of water. The trip was supposed to take 2 or 3 days. On the 3rd day, the train stopped in the middle of nowhere in Poland, not far from Auschwitz. Now, this I have to ad-lib on. I don't have it in my thing. 7 years ago, I was in how they call it, Yad Vashem in Israel. And I went to the room where they had the computers, and they looked up, "What's your name?" I said, "Paul Gross." "Where you come from?" This. They put it in. They had a whole history of mine from Germany.
Actually, let me see.
Yes. Yeah. Never mind. This is what it says. What happened to us from Heidelberg and cattle cars, transport, concentration camps, Vienna, Austria, and in the end, Theresienstadt. So wherever we went, they were bureaucrats sitting and writing down what their crimes. Anyway, just recently, a couple of months ago, I saw a documentary on television. It was my cattle cars. It was my transport. And you see the Germans, soldiers were fighting against each other. Now, I just found out what was the name of that guy? there was an organization in England, the Kindertransport, and they paid off the Germans for this train. And they gave them a couple of $100,000. Looks like some of the soldiers got the money, some didn't. So those who didn't get the money, they wanted the train to continue to Auschwitz. Those who got the money, they wanted to divert us to Austria, Vienna. And those who got the money, they won out, and we ended up going back towards Vienna. And we thought maybe the war was over and we were going home. But the train proceeded towards Vienna, Austria. By the time we arrived in Vienna, about 7 days had gone by. Of the people on the train, a lot of people on the train died already from the conditions. I saw them removing the bodies, piling them up like wooden logs. In Vienna, they put us in a school building. The grown-ups worked removing the rubble from daily bombing of the American Air Force. My brother, as real, used to sneak out at night to get some food because my mother was pregnant. I never knew how he did it, but he used to bring my mother milk that even the Austrians didn't have. My mother was pregnant at the time. On one of his escapades, unfortunately, he got killed. Hashem Yinachem es damo. Luckily, he's buried in the Jewish cemetery in Vienna. If you believe it or not, middle of the night, the Nazis came to us and they asked us if we have any people from the Chevra Kadisha from our town, because they didn't know what to do with him. They didn't want to bury him in a Christian cemetery, so they needed some Jews who know how to bury. So we actually had people from Chevra Kadisha. We sent them with them. This is the original. This is the original marker that one of my brothers put up after he left Hungary in 1948. But after that, my parents went to Israel and they came back to Vienna and they put up a nice big monument. By the way, he's buried with two other boys beside him. So it's a kever achim, as they say. Anyway, my mother was, okay. I was always taught that my brother was older because he did so much for his family. He was only 14 years old. Anyway, the Americans came to bomb Vienna every day like clockwork. At 11 a.m., they came wave after wave. They destroyed part of the city every day. We felt like Tamut nafshi magoim. We were happy. As long as they're killing the Nazis, we didn't mind if we had to die too. We knew that they were destroying the Nazis, bringing the war closer to end. Every day before 11 a.m., a small plane came and made a circle in the sky like a skywriter, right? And then the huge B-29s came and entered the circle and bombed the area. By the time they were finished, there were no buildings left, just rubble. One day, the small plane was making a circle right above our head. We knew that was going to be our end. When the sirens wailed, they herded us into the basement. All hell broke loose. A big bomb dropped into the basement. As the dust settled, we saw in the corner a huge shiny silver bomb about 8 feet tall. And there was a first time I saw an American flag painted on it. And on the side with a clock below it, we all became very, very quiet. We could hear the ticking. There was a sign painted, and I found out later it meant time bomb. It was a time bomb that didn't explode. Now, I don't know if the Americans did that on purpose. Did they know that it was a Jewish camp and they didn't want to kill us? Or it was by coincidence. But this was one of the nissim that made me survive. Everybody panicked. The Germans did not want to let us out until the clear sign sounded. We all tried to be next to the exit to get out as quickly as we could. The Gestapo man got very angry. Oh, and my mother stepped on the Gestapo man's feet. The Gestapo got very angry and slapped my mother. When I saw that, I went crazy, that someone should slap my wonderful mother. I started kicking his leg. He pulled out his revolver and put it to my head, ready to shoot me. The other soldier stopped him and said, "Let him go. He's only a stupid child." Finally, the clear sounded and they let us out. We could not believe our eyes. The whole neighborhood was only rubble, till the eyes could see. They made us camp out far from the building. Towards the evening, there was a huge explosion. The school building was completely gone. It means, had it blew up when we were in, I wouldn't be here either. Anyway, 13 years ago, I took my children and their spouses to Hungary. We also went to Vienna to visit my brother's grave. When we asked the office to find his cover, the woman looked up from the computer. "They have all the records." She said, "My God, he was only a child of 14. Then I realized what an unusual person he was. My parents never stopped mourning for him until the end of their days. They used to get pensions from Germany on his behalf. My mother used to say, he not only provided us while he was alive, but even after he passed away, he still supported us." My mother gave birth to a beautiful, oh, this is a baby.
No. Gave birth to a beautiful little girl in Vienna.
In Vienna. Okay,
Called her
because she
Shane.
was so beautiful, she called her Shane. The Germans decided to transfer us to Theresienstadt. On the way, in the middle of the cold, bitter winter of terrible condition, the baby got sick and died of meningitis. When I speak to assimilated Jews, I tell them a story that happened in Strasshof, which was on the way to Theresienstadt. We were in a huge building, and I saw a lady, an old lady in the corner. She was praying, "Please, Yoshke, help me. Please, Yoshke, help me." I did not understand what she was doing with us. So I asked my mother, "What is she doing here?" She wasn't Jewish. She had a big cross on her neck. She told me the Germans found out that she had a Jewish grandfather. And that was enough for them to throw her in with the rest of the Jews. So I tell these assimilated Jews, you might forget that you're Jewish, but the Goyim will not ever forget. So you might as well be a good Jew. Theresienstadt was a model camp. The Germans kept the pretenses that they treated us, the Jews, properly. When the whole world knew that they were exterminating the Jews in Auschwitz and other camps, once a month they used to come from the League of Nations, except from here, from Long Island, to inspect the camp. So once a month they gave us food and made us sit in a movie theater sometime from morning till night until the inspectors arrived. Then they put on the movie, and the Germans showed them how well they treat us. Look at them. They're having fun. They're watching movies. So we started hearing the rumble of the war coming closer. As the Russian army advancing towards us, the Germans got busy placing mines all over the camp. They planned to blow it up. Fortunately, they did not have enough time. I remember sitting on the walls of the camp, watching the Second World War armada passing by. You can imagine thousands and thousands of Russian tanks coming. The last day of the Russians, the Germans were escaping. I saw the commander of the camp jumped into his car trying to escape. His car would not start. I saw a huge Russian tank around the corner as it came closer, started to lower his cannon on the German car. When the Germans saw that, they all jumped out of the car and surrendered. The Russian colonel got on the top of the tank and started addressing us in a beautiful Yiddish. He says, Jeden, Hans enter frei, and they're the prisoners now. So that was a small consolation. He requested people to testify against the Nazis on the spot. He sentenced them to death right then and there and proceeded to hang them on the gates of the camp. We have risen from the ashes of the Holocaust. Hashem rewarded us for the sacrifice of our 6 million Kedoshim. We have a beautiful country today, more yeshivas than biblical days. Shonei Yisrael will disappear like in the olden days. We will grow and prosper. Netzach Yisrael lo yishoker. Am Yisrael chai. The destiny of the Jewish people will live forever. The Jewish people will never die. Now it's your turn, Rabbi Trump.
Wow. That is unbelievable to all and think about. It sounds like, Mr. Gross, that by all accounts, statistics and probability, you really shouldn't be here. But I decided that you should be here.
Yes.
I mean, if let's just go a little further. In that train that turned around, if the train had gone to Auschwitz, what happened with children at Auschwitz?
The first thing they did on the same day, they killed all the children and all the older people. That means I wouldn't be here. As a matter of fact, I want to mention one thing. I figured it out. We lost in the Holocaust. My immediate family, 2 grandmothers, dozens of uncles and aunts, dozens of cousins, about 60 people. 2 people from the whole family came back, and another aunt, another cousin. Now, my family, my parents' descendants, they are numerous. Let's say they're about 60. It took us 76 years to make up what we lost in 2 weeks in the Holocaust. But we made it up, Baruch Hashem.
Actually, no, Mr. Gross, I'm going to share the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of the Mishpacha. Let me see.
Yeah, that's part of the Mishpacha.
Part of the
was there for a second, but of it.
No, that's
That's
a different time.
Yeah, that was, I think, what was this, Miriam?
This was
That was my
3
80th.
years ago.
This was 3 years ago, my 80th birthday.
That's right. Let me just see if I can get the picture up here.
Married grandchildren.
There we are.
Since then, 2 more of our grandchildren got
There we
married.
go. 1 second.
Great grandchildren.
If I can.
Today we have great grandchildren,
Let's see. There we go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
This is when, Mr. Gross?
3 years ago,
Exactly 3 years
right
ago,
here
in
on
November.
Central Avenue.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It was my 80th birthday.
So this is
So-
mishpacha, and you're saying this part of the mishpacha and what you've managed to build now, in
Right.
70 plus years is what it took to even get to the same numbers.
Well, just my siblings have children also.
Right.
So this is just, I have about, what's his name? We have 17 grandchildren, 5 children, and 6 great-grandchildren. So that makes it, and I know about 30. But my brothers and sister also have children, and they also have. So today we have more than we lost, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem, but it's just it's scary to to contemplate. Mr. Gross, can you tell us about what were the conditions like in Theresienstadt between the inspectors? Or was it how difficult was it on a day-to-day basis?
Well, basically, I think once a day they gave us like a gemüse. Gemüse was a, how do you call it, a kind of soup. What happened is for the German army, they had the potatoes. So the potato peels, they gave it to the kitchen to cook for the Jews. That was our food, basically. But luckily, my family, my brothers, in the basement, they find the stash of potatoes hidden underground. So every day they digged up a few potatoes, and that's what kept us going, because I have friends in the young Israel. How's the guy named who lanes? Today he lanes, what's his name? Wexenbaum. Now Wexenbaum's father told me that his grandparents They come from Germany. And they ended up in Theresienstadt. And Nebet, they starved to death in Theresienstadt. They starved to death over there. So things were not good.
Wow. Actually, Mr. Wexelbaum this week for his father, actually.
What?
Yeah, he had
Just this week, actually, Mr. Wexelbaum Bert Wexelbaum has Yortzeit for his father.
Sir? Oh, your side.
But there was another reason that they had some sustenance. His mother made a big
Part of roux.
big pot of roux, Einbrand, we called it, because they had extra chicken fat and moose fat and whatever, and mixed with flour. So even on the train, she told me that she used to give the kids a spoonful of this roux, and it kept them sustained. They weren't starving as much as, you know, the others who had nothing.
My mother kept us alive, let's put it this way. Baruch Hashem. It was amazing to stay alive.
It's unbelievable. Do you want to tell us what was it like coming back to your town, to your village afterwards?
That's interesting. You know, they put us on a train, and of course the Russians liberated us. I always had a sore spot for the Russians, even the time of the Soviet regime, you know, Stalin, which wasn't a very good guy, but nevertheless, he liberated us. He saved our lives. And they were bringing us back to Hungary on a train from Theresienstadt. And before we entered Budapest, they stopped the train and they told us to go out into the forest and decorate the train with flowers and things to show the Hungarians, you show the Magyarim, the Hungarians, you coming back like victors and you're not the losers. And we came back all decorated with a train into Budapest. And after the war, we actually went back to our hometown, and these goyim were throwing garbage at us, cursing us. They were, you know, the biggest hypocrites in the world. They said, oh, we were crying. We felt so bad for you when they took you away. Meanwhile, they stole everything we had. You know, they emptied our houses, they emptied our apartments. We came back to nothing. We started from scratch again. And we lived there for 5 more years. In 1950,
I'd say, Mr. Gross, point, one of the questions in the chat, how many people roughly returned to your village?
Oh yeah, from 3,000 Jews.
30,000.
30,000.
3,000 Jews from my town, about 600-700 came back. And one of my memories, we used to have weddings almost every week because people lost their wives, their husbands, and they remarried each other. So we had a lot of weddings, you know, in Heidelberg. Today, by the way, there's not a single Jew in Heidelberg, and we just found out the Hungarian government rebuilt the shul like new. They're totally crazy. I expect the Jews to bring back the money or something, but there's no Jews there, not one Jew. Baruch Hashem, the cemetery is there. My grandparents are buried there. And yeah, Zema Shekara.
So as you were saying, later, what happened? So what was the next step in the...
5 years later, there was like a Hagrala, how do you say, a lottery. The communist government, that time was still Stalin around, made a lottery and they let people, 3,000 Jews, to go to Palestine, to Israel, who had relatives there. And we had an uncle, you know, that's I wanted to mention it also. Very few people realized what was happening, but there was a few smart people. I had an uncle, my mother's brother. In 1939, he saw what was coming. And he took off and went to Budapest, and Budapest through the Haganah, Romania. He ended up in Eretz Israel and Palestine. They sent a letter to his mother that he went to Palestine. So my grandmother disowned him. You left us, you're not my son anymore. So when we were going to the concentration camp in Debrecen, waiting to the trains, right? And my grandmother said, he was right after all. She realized. So not only him, but my wife's uncle also And he's an Ebentzar. You know who's an Ebentzar? The chief rabbi of Yerushalayim. They're cousins. I mean, but they are relatives. Anyway, so there were some people who saw what was coming, but even if they saw and they knew, there was nowhere to go. Nobody wanted the Jews. So in 1950, like I said, they had a hagrala, a lottery, and we fell into the lottery. But only you had to be over 18 and below 18 or over 40 in order to be able to leave Hungary. So my family was all right. My parents were over 40, and the children were under 18, except my sister. I had a sister who was over 18. So my father had to make a choice. He had to make a choice if to save the family and leave the daughter back, or so I don't know where he came, but he said, Harov Machria, the majority wins. So we decided, we left her with a lot of money. My father had money, with the aunt in Hungary, and we went to Eretz Yisrael. And we arrived in Eretz Yisrael in Pardes Chana, which was an old British military camp, which was an absorption center. And we had there Jews from Romania, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Taiman, everywhere. And so that's where I became 13-year-old. So I remember my father bought a bottle of arak and a few cookies, and I got an aliyah middle of the week, and that was my bar mitzvah. So over here I have 4 boys. I made them bar mitzvahs like they make in America, you know, like weddings. So I told them all about our bar mitzvahs. So one of the bar mitzvahs, you know, I have, all right, whatever. Go ahead.
Let's take ourselves back. This is a picture.
Yeah, for my mother and my father in the farm. Yeah, this is Eretz Yisrael already.
This is in Eretz
This is in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. How was the transition? What were the conditions like as you were settling down in the new place in Eretz Yisrael?
Oh, in Eretz Yisrael. Well, what happened is, after a few months, they transferred us to a place near Yavne. Ever heard of Yavne v'Chochomea? That was the place. They called the Moshav Bet Gamliel, after Rabban Gamliel. And there was a Moshav Ben Zakkai there, and so on and so forth. Anyway, basically it was an old, so we had to dig up the old orange trees. It was Arabs used to live there. And they built 100 houses for 100 families. And then they gave every family, you know, a cow, a piece of land, a car, and a horse. The car came from Holland. The horse came from Yugoslavia. So I remember once my father named our horse Tito. Tito was the president of Yugoslavia. He was their Kusha the Mensch. So once they came from the Yugoslav embassy to see how their horse is doing in Israel. So they come to our Moshav. So my father calls the horse, Tito, come over here. So the diplomat says, what do you call your horse? You promise me, give me your word, you change his name. You're not going to call him Tito. So my father, all right, I give my word. He changed his name to Chilag. Chilag means a star. And that's what his name afterward. It was a wonderful horse. And I never knew that, you know, we had cows. And we had 30 cows. Eventually became very well-to-do there. And the horses are so different. They have a 13-month pregnancy. So a cow is exactly like a woman, has 9-month pregnancy. A horse, 13-month pregnancy. After 13 months, he gives birth by himself, without help. A cow, you got to help. And unless the horse got pregnant 2 months after giving birth, never going to be pregnant ever again. So I remember we made sure the horse had a baby every year. And so this is where I grew up. until my father saw an ad in the paper. They're looking for diamond cutters. And he took me to a factory. I was 14 and a half years old. One of your pictures, you have one of those pictures.
This is yes. This is a picture of you.
Yes. I was 14 and a half, 15 years old here in a diamond factory, and I was learning to cut diamonds. And I did that for 50 years of my life, cutting diamonds. Cutting diamonds is a very, how do I say, very, not a simple thing, because every facet on the diamond has to be precise to get the maximum brilliance from the diamond, and so on and so forth. But I was young and I learned fast, and it was peaceful. They paid us for each diamond 2 lirot. And once I learned, I was already 15, I was making more than grown-ups because I was faster than them. And my father, Rav Sholem, had one tremendous, talent. He placed his kids into all what to do, you know. So he made me a diamond cutter. Another brother became a mechanic. And I had one brother who was a good student, Moshe, and he sent him to college. He went to university, Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And on my earnings, they sent him to college. And I have a degree, a diploma from Haida Bessermi, from my hometown, 5th grade elementary. That was the last time I ever went to school. But I educated myself. I speak 5 languages, and so on and so forth.
Unbelievable. Mr. Gross, tell us a little further. Tell us about the army experience in Israel.
Yes. After I became 17 and a half, that was the age when you had to go to the army. So I went to the army, and they made me a truck driver. I drove trucks and so on and so forth. That was in 1955. And then this was my truck. And here, my hand, there is a machine gun, which was an old British Sten machine gun, similar to the Uzi. But this was me. I was here maybe 18 years old already. And then the war broke out.
Which war are we talking about?
1956, Gamal Abdel Nasser was the president of Egypt. And he said he's going to wipe out Israel, kill all the Jews, throw them in the ocean. So we somehow managed to unite with the British and the French, because he closed the Suez Canal also. So he closed the Suez Canal, so the British were not happy about it, so they decided to join us in the war. So instead of waiting for them to attack, we attacked them. And we ended up fighting war with 4 Arab countries: Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, totaling soldiers in the millions. The Israeli army maybe had 500,000 soldiers, 600,000, right? And we defeated them in a couple of days. So after the war, actually, a French reporter came over and happened to pick on me, and he wanted to know, how did we manage to defeat an army of millions? We were so few, so little. So I told him there's a saying in Hebrew, "Ein brera," you have no choice. You see, I knew my parents were back 20, 30 miles from the border. And if we lose, they run us over, they're going to throw our parents and all our families and all the Jews into the ocean. So we fought like lions. So they couldn't we defeated them. And one of the interesting things, right after the war, I was driving my commander into the Sinai Desert. We were following the army that already defeated the Egyptians. And the Sinai desert was full of tens of thousands of boots all over the place. So I said, my commander, I said, what are all these boots? He says, well, you don't understand. The Egyptian army only took in the boys, the farm boys. They didn't take in the intelligentsia from the cities, you know, the rich boys, only the poor people. And these boys never wore shoes in their life. The only place they wore shoes in the army. And when they had to run, first thing they did, they threw away the boots and they ran. So,
unbelievable. Or being able to be after having been experiences of the Holocaust that you went through.
Wait, I couldn't hear you. Say it again.
What was your experience? How did you feel being able to be a soldier for Israel after having faced the helplessness of the Holocaust?
That's a very good question, because I wanted to mention it. You know, after going through the Holocaust as a helpless little boy, 7 years old, this is only 10, 11 years later. And I'm a soldier. I learned how to shoot with a gun, how to throw a hand grenade, and I knew I can defend myself. So So it was a tremendous good feeling to be able to be able to defend myself and our country. So it was quite an experience to live through this and to live through the Holocaust, and then being a soldier in the Israeli army and defending the land of Israel.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
One part of the story we haven't touched upon yet is
Yes.
Mrs. Gross.
Yes.
How did the two of you connect?
Well, we were introduced by his cousin. But I was born in Budapest, and I was born in 1943 in the middle of the war, so I survived as a miracle in itself. And there weren't that many Jews even in Budapest after the Holocaust. But his cousins knew my mother and my sister and my brother from Budapest, and they said, "Oh, he's by himself. Maybe this girl will be good for him," and it worked.
This I want to mention. This is, what year was it?
1961.
1961, Purim. I was invited to Sudat Purim. This is a Schlesinger family, the Satmar Hasidim. And they invited me for a Purim Suda. So one of them asked me, Paul, don't you feel lonely all by yourself? Would you like to meet a girl? I said, would you like to get married? I said, if I meet the right girl, I would marry. And before I met Mrs. Gross, I wasn't that frum. So I used to go out with a lot of girls. So I had, nevertheless, I said, if I meet the right girl, I would. So they gave me her telephone number. So I got her on the phone with her. The only common language with her I had is Hungarian. I didn't know English yet. She didn't know Hebrew. So we spoke in Hungarian. And as soon as we started speaking, we right away connected, because our background was quite similar, and so on and so on. We stayed on the phone for an hour. Now, I want to just mention this. Once I hang up, they said, no, are you going to go out with her? I said, I don't have to. I'm going to marry her. I said, there's no such thing, even by the Satmar. You meet the girl once or twice. What do you mean you're going to marry? I said, this is the girl I'm going to marry.
That's what
we connected. It was, as they say, it was Bashert.
It was Bashert.
I share over here. That's the picture. What?
Yeah.
I was 18 and he was 23.
And what year?
What year?
1961, June 12th.
Unbelievable.
It's almost 60 years, 59 and a half years.
Unbelievable. Actually, a special mazel tov, Mr. Gross. You just had your birthday last week.
Yes, last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Past week.
Past week. I turned 83. Baruch Hashem.
Let me ask, there's a few questions that the audience have been asking. I'm going to just put in a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One is somebody asked, when did you realize your train was diverted from Auschwitz to Vienna? Like when you were in it, when did you realize?
When did you?
When did we realize? Well, we, to be honest with you, we did not know what Auschwitz is to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But we know they were just exterminating Jews. And we were going on the train, and all of a sudden the train stopped for a day and then changed directions. To be honest with you, wait, I tell you one thing, we didn't know nothing, because even in the camp itself, some people, I have read books about people that they were celebrating Hanukkah in the camp and this and that. We didn't celebrate nothing. We didn't know nothing. We didn't know what day of the week it was. But we had an old rabbi who was a heavy smoker. So he used to speak up. Rabbi Sai, I feel the nicotine urge is leaving me. Must be Erev Shabbos. That's how we knew it was Shabbos coming.
That's amazing.
That's
fun.
Maaseh Shahoya.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we didn't know where we were going. Wherever we were prisoners, they took us wherever they wanted.
So meaning only after you really fully realized.
Yes, only after the war. When we misbehaved, they used to threaten us, we could send you to those camps where they gassing and cremating the Jews. The Germans used to threaten us. But to know, really, we didn't know until the war was over. What happened?
Unbelievable. There's actually somebody who's in the audience here, whose name is Nat Farago. Nat
Farago is a friend of mine.
Yes, so the
Farago. He comes from my home. He comes from my hometown, Diverted.
Yes, he just posted.
But he's younger than me.
Yes. He said he grew up on the same street as you. Who's listening?
That's right. And unfortunately, because of the virus, I don't see him in shul anymore for a long time. But yeah, he's a very nice man, and I consider him a good friend. Thank you, Mr. Farago, for calling in.
There's also Judith Greenberger asked the question. This is a very difficult question. Do you see any resemblance to the social environment we are living through now as Jews to the environment you lived through in 1944?
No, I tell you, this is one of the questions. When I used to speak in schools, I spoke in a lot of schools in the area and out of the area. And many times the kids ask me this question: can the Holocaust happen here in America? And my answer was no. And it's still no. I tell you why. The Hungarians used to tell us, you Jews, go back to Palestine. You're not Hungarians. Here, nobody can tell you, we're Americans. You go back to where? Where you come from? Where is everybody comes from? They come from Ireland, from England, from France. Nobody is from America. Only the Native Americans. So that's one of the reasons. That's one thing. Another thing, the American people are very nice, good people. When I took my children back to Hungary for a week, Friday night we dressed up like Jews with the black hats and black suits, going to shul. All of a sudden the Schutzing started chasing us and screaming, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. My kids were shocked. They never heard of such thing. I said, you don't understand, that's in their blood. It's in their blood. And the American going are not like this. Not only that, the Americans, what are you doing, Miriam?
I'm looking for
Don't do that. The Americans, they support the Nefesh B'Nefesh. They give hundreds of millions dollars, the evangelical church, to send people to Eretz Yisrael. So as I say, there is anti-Semitism. I know there's anti-Semites in America. They are bad people, but not like Eastern Europe. Eastern European, I'm telling you, it's in their blood. They bring them up with hatred toward the Jews. It's absolutely no comparison. American people, Baruch Hashem, are good people.
Thank you for that.
Let's hope they stay that way. Let's hope they stay that way.
You know, Mr. Gross, a number of people are asking, what happened to your sister who remained in Vienna? The one who was over 18, did she go with you or did she have to stay behind in the end?
Oh, not Vienna. This was in Hungary.
In Hungary,
No,
after all.
Hungary. She stayed in Hungary. We left Hungary in 1950. In 1956, there was a revolution in Hungary. And that's where Mrs. Gross,
That's when I crossed the Hungarian border.
she left Hungary. And my sister was already married. She married somebody in Hungary. And with a baby, they crossed the border.
They carried the baby in a basket.
And they came to Eretz Yisrael. They're watching this. They know, hi, Adika. Their daughter is my niece. It's my sister's daughter. So they left in 1956. There was a revolution in Hungary. A lot of Jews. Nevertheless, Hungary still has 100,000 Jews, mostly in Budapest, Hungary. And the Hungarian government today is run by a guy named Orban. He's a good man. He lost Eretz Yisrael, and he's good to the Jews. You know, I just heard, when I was in Hungary 13 years ago, there's one shul in Buda. Buda is 2 cities, Buda and Pest. Buda has 6 Orthodox synagogues today, and there's a real Jewish life, restaurants, and everything going on in Hungary today. So the government is a good government. The people are still Sonny Israel. They can help themselves. Yeah.
Mr. Gross, there's just one question that's asking is, when did you come to America?
What?
When did you come to America?
I came in 1957 after the revolution, and he came in 59.
I came in 1959. You asked me a better question. Why did I come to America?
Yes.
Right? Okay. You won't believe it. But Eretz Yisrael, Israel, when we came to Israel, was Yemei Tzena. You know what Yemei Tzena is? Tzena. It was,
There was
rationing.
He was starving
in Vienna. There was no food. Israel had 150, 200,000 Jews, 1947. 1950, it swelled into 1.5 million, and they had nothing. So I remember starving a lot, in the 1950s. So, and also, I didn't see much of a future. And then, it's a crazy thing, but I was in the Sinai Desert. I was stationed there for 6 months. I was going crazy, all you see is sand and sky. So one night I lie on the sand and I see the beautiful, I don't know, I've ever been to, even in the Negev, you see the most beautiful sky, there's no clouds, it's incredible. So I see that beautiful sky and I said, under this beautiful stars and sky, there's a Paris, there's a London, there's a New York. After the army, I'm out of here. I'm going to see the world. So that's what I did. I went to Vienna, if you believe it or not, where I was in concentration camp. I stayed there for 6 months, waiting for a visa to get to the United States. I always wanted, I saw the Hollywood movies. If you believe it or not, I was very influenced by that. I saw, because the Hollywood movies, they showed you what life was America, but that wasn't America when I came here.
Nobody in Europe thought that, even in Budapest, when I saw those movies, that's what I wanted.
But nevertheless, I still say that America, despite with all the problems, everything, is still the best country in the world, except for Eretz Yisrael. Israel today is a much better country than it was when I was there. But America is still good people, good parnasa, for most people. They make a decent living. And Jews, Kanai Nahara, yeshivas and everything, we didn't have anything like this since Babylon. That's when we had something like what we have today in America. And I wanted America.
Unbelievable. Mr. Gross,
yes.
where you spoken about this, where I know you said you spoke at a number of schools and
Yes.
Tell me about tell us about where you've spoken and why this is so important to you.
Well, I spoke. There was a shul on Peninsula Boulevard, and also I spoke in where the kids went.
Not help. No, you spoke in SKA.
SKA,
in
Jersey, JAC, and then I had one granddaughter, who was going to a public school, and if you believe it or not, in Jersey, the curriculum for the public schools has studied Holocaust studies. So my granddaughter told the teacher that her grandfather is a Holocaust survivor. So the teacher called me up. She was Jewish, and she asked me to come and speak to their school. So I come there, and I see Spanish, Black, Chinese, everything. Very, very few Jewish kids, all going kimat. Anyway, so I told them my story as usual, and then I opened up to, you see, the way I used to work in schools, I used to speak, and I opened up to questions and answers. So here I opened up to questions and answers. So the questions were so different from what the questions I used to get from Jewish kids, when they asked me questions, because what I told them, they felt it on their own skin. It could happen to them, but Goyim, they were asking questions like, is this something that's happened in Rwanda or Uganda, but not, it didn't affect them. It didn't mean much to them, that was the difference. But
also they asked him if he knew Schindler.
They know me. They wanted to know if I know Schindler, because that time the movie Schindler List was popular. So basically, that's.
But Schindler was not in Hungary, so how would you know?
Whatever.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Mr. Gross, really appreciate it. One of the questions a number of times for you to give us a bracha. To give us
yes. You want me to give you a bracha?
The people, I personally and the audience have been asking if you could both give us a bracha.
Yes.
With having been through what you
Yes. You see, it's, how do you call it? It became customary that the Holocaust survivor can give a bracha, and it's appropriate. And I tell you, I'm gonna give over the same bracha the Satmar Rebbe gave me. The Satmar Rebbe was here a couple of years ago. Rebbe Aaron, or what's his name? I asked the Rebbe, can you give me? Oh, he says, Mr. Gross. I gave him Kittel. He says, what kind of bracha can I give you? What do you need? I said, Rebbe, I tell you the truth. I don't need anything. I have everything. I have wonderful children. I have parnose. I'm healthy. I don't need anything. So what can, he says, as a Zoy, I tell you in Yiddish, then I tell you in English. As a Zoy, als der geben a Bruche, es te gleichen. Dass der Leben lange Jahren in good gesund. He says, you should live long years in good health. And that's the bracha I give you and to your audience. You should all live many, many long years in good health.
Amen.
Amen.
Joining us this evening. Everybody's going to be watching this secondarily in the future as well. You should be able to share with you, and thank you for sharing your inspiration. Thank you for sharing your moment. It is truly, really an inspiration to all of us. And I'm seeing comments from the audience now who are expressing that, who have really appreciated the time that you've taken to be there. And we look forward to celebrating many more anniversaries. Gesund zu langer Jahren.
Well, I thank God, I see you every week, and I appreciate that you turn to me, because this is the first time that anybody from the Young Israel turned to me about my Holocaust experiences, and not that we have a lot of Holocaust survivors. So a special thank for you, Rabbi Trump. You're a sensitive person who realized there is room here for a discussion, and I appreciated it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, it's an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you.
A very good Woche. Looking forward to seeing you in the week and on Shabbos, Bezras Hashem.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have one quick question.
Of course. Of course.
Recording.
I'm sorry.
Where you're recording this?
This will be recorded, and I'm going to put up the link and send it out to the shul and to you, so people who are not
Okay,
will be able to see this and be able to appreciate this.
That was one of the questions my friend asked me.
Absolutely.
My friend
It
asked
will
me.
be available very shortly, God willing.
Thank you so much.
Start commenting and saying thank you. Thank you for your time. That's what I
Thank
want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you.
good Woche.
Thanks, everybody.
Shavua tov.